Welcome to another episode of CPOV Autographs. I, of course, am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon, your host, and I am very excited about today's episode. It is a returning guest and someone I truly love. But before we get to that, I, of course, want to direct folks to the one-stop shop for all the stuff that I do. If you've not gone to djstormageddon.com, you can to find not only my Twitch streaming and all of the podcasts I do, but as well all my social media, my merch store, all of that good stuff. Ko-fi, if you want to support me that way too. You can go check all of that out again at djstormageddon.com. Now, to get right into this week's episode, it is with the incredible Raina Sinclair. Raina Sinclair has appeared on this podcast 2 other times before, each accompanied by her co-producers at the time for Magical Girl Burlesque. But this time she's rolling solo to chat about her OnlyFans, getting by in the pandemic, how Magical Girl Burlesque has evolved during said pandemic, and more. We goof a lot. I really do love this woman. She is one of my best friends, and I miss hanging out with her so much. I'm so glad that we at least got to hang out on a call to bring you this episode. Be mindful that the audio is a little different this time because it was a recorded audio call, so it has that kind of phone call sound. I cleaned it up the best I could, and it's pretty clear, all things considered, but I wanted to give you that heads up in advance. So anyway, without any further ado, here is my incredible chat with the brilliant, beautiful, and badass Raina Sinclair.
That's valid.
You think I would after all this time, and yet I don't.
I mean, I, for one, welcome our robot overlords, but that's a whole other story.
That's true. I mean, it'll only get easier, right? Once they take over, then I don't have to think for myself anymore. And honestly, let's admit how exhausting that is, really. Raina Sinclair, I'm very excited to have you on the show. This is your 3rd time on Autographs, the first time since the new name. And first time rolling solo, but I'm happy to have you. I was going to make some joke about how every time you've come on before, it's been with another producer who no longer works for Magical Girl. But either way,
I went on once here, and then I went on your movie podcast once.
You were the first time you were actually ever on this podcast was back when Paige Literati was also a producer. It was the 3 of you. So
yes. But I don't think I did a second time.
Yeah, you and Betty came on. Mm-hmm.
My God.
You sure did.
What the fuck is time?
I know, right? Nothing makes sense anymore. Time is a lake, but that's okay. I'm really excited to have you back. I am sad that I haven't seen you pretty much since the last show I hosted because pandemic. But I've been very excited to...
Vanilla.
Yeah. But I have been very excited to see how Magical Girl Burlesque has continued to thrive to the best of its ability in the pandemic, because it's all a shit show at this point. And even attended a few shows as well. So I think first I would love to chat just a bit about how... I mean, for those who've been listening to Autographs for a long time know that I mutually stepped away from Magical Girl to pursue podcasting more hardcore and go to more conventions. Joke's on me, because there were no more conventions. But still a sound decision. But you, of course, was of course in great hands, as you and Betty ran most of that ship anyway. So that happened early last year, and then pandemic, no more live shows, no more being able to do anything, but y'all shifted pretty easily, it seemed, into doing them digitally over Zoom and other ways.
I wouldn't say it was easy.
Well, that's fair. I'm sure it was not a cakewalk, but talk a little bit about that process, about having to create the shows differently. Because I mean, even when I was still hosting shows with y'all, you both hosted shows occasionally as well. So like taking over the hosting stuff is not that big of a deal for you and Betty, but it was a different animal because you had to create almost these like sketches. Like I remember your Comic-Con show specifically was all framed around you and Betty trying to actually go to Comic-Con and being at Comic-Con with little skits, which were delightful. Was that an active decision that y'all made to like, well, if we're going to do this, we have to like create it in a structure that works for us?
Well, so far in the pandemic, we've actually only done two shows. We did the Comic Consolation Prize, aka MGB Con 2020, and so as you know, we used to have a monthly format where we would have a theme show once a month, and then every other month we would do our workshop show, the new review. And so basically, March 2020 was our Homestuck show, and we had plans to come back in April, and that went completely out the window.
Yep.
Everything went completely out the window. And so eventually what happened is that as the months came and went, we decided to do basically we really missed cons because like we all love cons. I had plans to go to Dragon Con for the first time ever, and maybe that'll happen this year. Who the fuck knows? I had plans to finally see My Chemical Romance live in concert, and that did not happen. I spent $250 on those tickets. Cry. Sorry, off topic.
It's all good.
Yet still on topic because we didn't get to have our MCR show last year. So basically everything flew out the window. Our schedule flew out the window. And so we were like, well, what's something that we really, really have big feelings on and would want to do a Zoom show about? And so we were like, well, let's do like a send up to cons. And so we decided that to make it fun for us, we would do a bunch of in-joke sketches about our con experiences, me and Betty's con experiences, and like try to get as many cosplay acts as possible. And it was a lot of work. Our second show, the Tumblr charity show we did for my birthday in January, we decided not to do sketches because basically a lot of that has to do with filming and like getting together to film at Betty's place, the Possum Lounge. So we wanted to keep it simple, stupid.
That's legit. And I mean, that show was great just because as a viewer, watching you and Betty both realize acts that you've been working on since before you even started producing burlesque, essentially, at least an idea, right? Like Betty's always wanted to do a stupid Tumblr like meme show and did a very memeable act that I would argue Betty is known for. And then, of course, you did a sailor act that like, and everyone knows your love of Sailor Moon. I think anyone who even peripherally knows you knows how much you love it. And so that was a fun show to watch just because as a friend, I knew how much work had been going into those things. And like your staff for your Sailor act, like you'd been posting progress shots and stuff. That must have, in a year that was somewhat unsatisfying because of the pandemic, must have felt satisfying at least to make those strides and those accomplishments for that show.
It did. Like, yeah, I still have that glaze, and it is sitting in my living room, and it is 6 feet tall. So who knows if I will ever actually get to do that act live. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, Zoom is like a completely different beast because with digital shows, it's always more about the setup than it is the actual show.
Right.
Like, when it comes to live shows, it's like you, like, prepare, but ultimately everything comes to, like, those 3 to 5 minutes where it's like you do the thing and then you rest. And with Zoom shows, it's all about, all right, did you film this act? If you didn't film this act, you're going to have to film this act, which means you're going to have to like focus on lighting. You're going to have to figure what music you want. You're going to have to choreograph it, not in a way that you would on a stage, but like in a way that would be interesting in a video. And then you're going to have to edit that act using software that you may have never used before. And so like once you have the act in hand, then you have to deal with Zoom. And in me and Betty's case, what we did was essentially we opened up a professional Zoom account for like the one day that we need it. And then we do a setup where we open up her Mac desktop and then her Mac laptop at the same time. And basically we go back and forth with me on the laptop hosting and then her on the desktop playing people's videos. And we like basically throw the hosting ball on Zoom back and forth to make this work for like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, but you're absolutely right about it being a whole different animal. And I'm curious because we've also been in audiences together for other shows. How do you feel like, I mean, there are obvious ways, but what's different for you about a Zoom show versus a live show, other than, of course, the removed live experience itself? But do you find that you're able to enjoy Zoom shows as much, or is it just it's not the same as the live experience?
I mean, it depends from show to show. Like, sure. And I think it also like depends on like my preference of burlesque. Like, if people have never met me, they know that my tendencies lean towards the more artsy and nerdy, and like if you tell a good story, then I'm interested. It's not that I don't appreciate classical burlesque as an art form, because I do. And like if somebody is a good dancer or like has a lot of emotion, like basically what matters to me is the story of burlesque.
Right.
And if like you aren't telling a story, regardless of like of medium, either if it's in real life or not, then like my brain tends to wander elsewhere. And so like I think a thing that I've noticed about video shows is that, and like me and Betty have talked about this, is that like a straight on performance video isn't necessarily the most interesting thing ever. Like you want to edit it in a certain way, like by using multiple angles or like video editing tricks or lighting or what have you to like tell an interesting story. And like you don't even really need to like dance or like do that many intricate moves in video, which is like one of the good things. You just have to edit it in a creative way. And so I think that, and obviously this is a personal struggle for me as somebody who never trained to be a videographer,
right,
or really have anything to do with the visual medium, because I was trained as a writer. And so the people that have really shined in the pandemic, and one of the reasons Betty Brash is like killing it right now is because the people with editing skills and video skills are the ones that are really thriving. And when those are on display, like there are some amazing things. Like fucking Renaissance Noir has literally done nothing but I think like make at least a video a week for the past year. And I'm like, God bless, friend. You have a wherewithal I do not. But like they are like killing it. I saw their Persephone act that they just did for BlurredCon. Persephone from Wicked and the Divine, which is a comic we both love.
Yeah.
And they literally like the way they used the green screen and like just their like face and their movements and like everything, it was like, art. Art.
It's wild what the medium can do when like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? Talking about our mutual friend Betty, like any video editing or Photoshop or anything we needed over the tenure of Magical Girl has pretty much been her. She is a computer wizard. It's literally what she went to school for. And so like the Give Me Compliments act, which we knew was going to happen eventually, would have been great live no matter what, but the fact that it happened in quarantine with that ridiculous video editing was pure comedy gold in a way that I think wouldn't have worked quite the same, at least live. She still could have done it for sure, but it would have had to been shaped differently, right? I think you're absolutely right that the editing is the hero for a lot of these acts, and that's also just as important of a talent if you're working on that kind of a thing. And I think that goes with like anything that's being created in quarantine. I mean, most of the stuff that I've been doing was unaffected because I was recording most podcasts remotely already before it happened. But I've definitely streamed on Twitch more now that I'm home more. Like I think we've all had to shift our priorities to some degree or another. And I think I will appreciate live shows in a very different way when we can eventually, whenever, go back to doing / seeing them. honestly, I'll be happy if I can sit in the same room as my friends, unmasked and safely at some point in the next year. I'll consider that a fucking
I mean,
victory.
that's kind of the mood.
Yeah.
That's kind of the mood. I mean, yeah, like, and because so much work goes into Zoom shows, like, I mean, some people have pulled off the monthly thing, and I will give those people credit. And, like, Viktor has restarted, like, White Elephant Burlesque through, like, a monthly Zoom, and, like, God bless him, but, like, we just didn't have the wherewithal
Sure.
to do a monthly Zoom show. It just wasn't something that like was in the cards. And so we're hoping that things will open up soon. We tentatively have plans for a 5-year anniversary show in June.
Sure.
That will also be Zoom because things won't be opened up by then. But we're hoping that like maybe by end of summer, like beginning of fall, we can go back on stages. And maybe like when that does happen, we will like try to take some of those Zoom lessons. Like I know that some of the people that are doing live shows are also like streaming at the same time.
Yeah.
Where it's like, so you get both live audience and the people that maybe wouldn't be able to come out because of like various reasons.
Yeah, totally. I mean, accessibility is a different conversation now, right? Like, I mean, major companies will do it anyway, but like they have less of a leg to stand on now to say, oh, you can't work from home because that's just bullshit now. 90% of everyone is working from home now. And like, but even like accessibility, like, you know, people can't go out for a variety of reasons, and sometimes it's beyond their control. Chronic injury, you know, illness, whatever. Hopefully, post-pandemic, there will be more kinds of accessibilities, both for seeing bar shows and live concerts and whatever else, you know. I mean, I have to imagine even things like Broadway and stuff have to shift, right? Like they've been shut down for so long. Had they had some kind of digital way to show these shows, they might have had other avenues, and that infrastructure didn't exist in a real way before the pandemic.
And like, well, I mean, Broadway is also a special case because like so much of that is about exclusivity and money. Like the whole thing of like Hamilton refusing to like have a video for like years. Like that's a whole other conversation that I don't like, I'm not necessarily equipped to have. But like, I think that at least burlesque performers, it's easier. Well, I mean, it's easier for us because, like, we have always taped things anyway. Like, that was always our policy to, like, get videos for the performers. And, like, one of the things we did do is that we didn't put up the Tumblr show on Vimeo because that was a one-time charity thing. But we did put the Comic-Con show up on our Vimeo. And so, like, even if you miss the show, if you pay us $10, like, you can see the whole thing in its glory. Like, there isn't like even if you can't have the live experience, I think there are still ways that you can figure out a way to make things accessible going on in the future. If not live, then like after the fact.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, also it's hard to, I don't, when I say the words post-pandemic, I don't even like, I can't even imagine what that life is like yet, right? And I mean, part of that is because, you know, everyone's had their own trials and tribulations over the last year. It's been hard for so many people beyond just the pandemic. And like I myself lost my home to a fire. And so like knowing what life is 6 months from now, let alone a year from now, would have been hard enough in the pandemic. But then for me specifically, I have an experience that's shifted that even more. I'm curious what obviously the burlesque stuff has been stilted and hasn't been as the same as it was when you were alive, but how did your life really change during the pandemic? I know that you started an OnlyFans, you started creating more digital content. What are some of the things you've done to kind of like shift your professionally being naked career while being stuck at home and not being able to go to said bar, event, or venue?
Well, one, I've been depressed as fuck.
Well, that's a mood for all of us, I think.
I mean, I live alone with my cat, which before the pandemic is great. And like, let's be real, I'm still very happy I do not have roommates, because I feel like if I had roommates, that would be like a whole other deal. But yeah, it gets very like, I mean, that's kind of the trade-off we made in the pandemic. Either you see people every day that you may get sick of, or like me, you don't see people at all.
Right.
I'm able to go out on walks with like friends occasionally, and I'll like occasionally like go to the park or like go on a bike ride and like hang out outside. But it's like, for the most part during the week, the only person I see is my cat.
For better or worse.
For better or worse. And so that gave me a lot of time that I didn't have before. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because I'm one of those people where it's like, if I get too thinky about a thing and get too in my head, then I go like crazy.
Yeah.
And so I guess I needed somewhere to put all that creative energy if it wasn't going to burlesque. And so I learned how to do photography for the first time ever. I bought a ring light, and I basically have been using my phone to create digital photos that I put on my OnlyFans, and the less risque ones on my Instagram and Twitter. I got Twitter for the first time ever.
Yeah, it took a pandemic for you to join the rest of us on Twitter.
No, to be fair, the only reason I did was because Instagram was threatening to take my account. So I was like, I guess I'll finally get on fucking Twitter. I don't like it though. I've done a podcast with Stevie Lynn off and on throughout the pandemic. I watch a lot of Twitch streams because that's essentially how me and my friend AOL talk to each other.
That's valid. A former guest of this very podcast, AOL, America Online at AOL.com, who's an incredible streamer as well. It's funny because like AOL, Bretzo and I were friends pre-pandemic. Like I am with a lot of burlesque performers. Like we talk once in a while, always happy to see each other. But I feel like we got closer during the pandemic just because they have a Discord. We've collaborated. They've done podcasts with me, and like it's funny how the pandemic's kind of shifted how we interact with other humans because of necessity, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, like I joined AOL's Discord, and like I'll admit that sometimes like it can be overwhelming because you have a bunch of strangers just sending you messages constantly, and sometimes I just need to shut everything off. But like it's nice being able to like have sort of a little forum to like talk to people.
Totally.
Which like, I mean, it's both good and bad, because like it's nice to have like interactions with other people, but it's still like I'm still staring at my screen all the time. And I'd like to know what it's like to converse with a human again.
Yeah. So Rachel Quirky Shank, the incredible Rachel Quirky Shank, and myself made a joke like that recently with a yet to be. It'll be out by now, I think, by the time this episode comes out. We did an episode with Abe Goldfarb, the incredible Abe Goldfarb, Bastard Keith. And like the whole preamble of the show is like, this is what it's like to talk to humans. Like Zoom calls and podcasts are like our excuse with video to like figure out what it's like to talk to people again. It's so like I it's weird, right? Like I guess I took for granted how much I enjoyed hugging my friends and being able to just like touch people in a consensual platonic way. But like and I'm very lucky to live with my spouse, and like I have someone I'm with, but like my brain, I didn't know that a part of my brain would atrophy like that almost, right? Like what is it like to be around people? Like, I can't even imagine it. It feels like it's been so long.
I mean, I went out for ice cream with Maggie McMuffin yesterday, and we literally just walked around Bushwick and did errands together. And like, that was just so like affirming.
You're right.
Like literally all we did was get ice cream and like we went to like Rite Aid or Walgreens. It was Walgreens. We went to Walgreens together. And then she like hugged me, like, as we said goodbye, masked obviously. And it was like, that was like the most genuine human interaction. Like, I mean, not that I haven't had other like interactions with people, but that was like the most satisfying quality human interaction I've had in a while.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like, and also I don't know about you, but I've developed a lot of friendships online that maybe were acquaintanceships. I don't know. Words are hard. But like I had a lot of friends through burlesque or through video games or through conventions that I've gone to that I was acquaintances with and like I sort of knew that I would just talk to more on Twitter since that's mostly the only social space I'm on. I'm on Instagram sort of. But like I'm talking to people a lot more, and like even people that I met at PAX East last March that I only sort of knew, I've now spoken to almost every week for a year and like feel like super close friends in a way that I've made friends online before, but something about, and I've always considered those friendships legitimate, but there's something I think about the legitimacy of an online friendship now more than ever, right? Because it's kind of the only way we can interact with people.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the two main people that I talk to that don't live in New York are Brexo and AOL.
Yeah.
And like once every other week, me and AOL will have like a video chat off of Twitch where we just spend 3 hours shooting the shit together. Nice. And Brexo occasionally interjects when he feels the need.
Sounds like Brexo.
Yes, that is Brexo. So funny fact, I thought you would appreciate this. I actually had a dream about Brezzo yesterday.
Okay.
Which was us trying to record a podcast in what looked like a nature reserve or like one of those like suburban like fancy parks where it's basically just like trails for everything. And there was like an audience of like our friends that were watching us on like wooden benches and shit, and we kept forgetting to press record. That was the entire dream. I don't know what it means, or I don't think it even symbolizes anything, but it basically was us trying to have a conversation in the middle of the woods while keep forgetting to press play.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Also, for me as a podcaster, that would be the worst stress dream ever. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, freaking out about not pressing the record button. Sounds awful. It's very funny.
So, yeah. Like, and I mean, I think that, like, one of the ways AOL has definitely been helpful to me personally is that, like, she has become sort of a sounding board for like ideas that I have. Like, sure. She was the one that was like, well, if you're getting into like photo editing, you should like download this app and this app and this app. Or like, if I like want to do a new like crafting project, she's like, oh, here are like some materials you could use. Like, she's very good at the creative process because like her whole deal is that she's a graphic artist freelancer. Like, she deals with people in a way that like I'm just frankly terrible at.
What, you?
Like, not that I like, well, I don't say I want to, that I dislike people. I'm just very bad at the whole front facing, like, I'm bad at customer service voice and customer service personality, and I'm bad at just like cold socialization where you're meeting new people and they're like, tell me about yourself. And so like people that know me always say I'm very loud, but it's really funny because like at work or like with people I don't know, I get very quiet.
Yep.
And like, so it's like kind of this dichotomy of like, if you know me, you kind of know me as this like loud, boisterous person, but otherwise I'm just this weird, quiet gremlin.
It's true. I can't remember who it was, so I'm going to pin it on Andreas just because it's fun to blame him for stuff. But I feel like Andreas in the early days was like, wow, Raina's so quiet. And I just kind of looked at him bug-eyed like, Really? Are we talking about the same person? I don't know what you're talking about. It probably wasn't Andres, but I feel like there was a burlesque or a burlesque adjacent person who didn't know you super well yet and was like, wow, she's so quiet. And I just laughed in their face. Like, no, she's not. To you, maybe.
Yeah. And so, like, for me, and I think this is the thing that I still definitely struggle with, is that, like, I'm not an influencer. I'm not good at the whole social media branding thing, which has definitely been a struggle in the pandemic because I feel like so much now is about your online brand.
Yep.
Like, not that I'm not I'm okay at social media. Like, I'm decent, but like I've been on Instagram for like 5 years and I still have less than 1,000 followers, which is like the golden number or whatever. But like, so for me, I think the struggle has been, I've definitely gotten better at like the creative aspects and like have learned to enjoy the creative aspects. I think I finally got to a place with my photographs where it's like, all right, this is the sort of mood I'm going for. And like, I want to do like really bright sort of like indie, like hard femme type things. But then it becomes a thing of like constantly promoting yourself, especially like when it's so hard with OnlyFans because so many people don't want you to promote your OnlyFans. Right. And so it's like, I'm doing okay. And like, I am very blessed to have like a work from home desk job that I have. So it's not like I need to pay the rent like other people do. But like, it would be nice, like all the supplemental income I got from burlesque has basically been me trying to do like photography and content. And that is not as successful simply because it's constantly this thing of you need to get eyeballs on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's totally right. I think a thing switched on in my brain early last year when I actively was making the shift to focusing on my podcast, which I'd had for a long time, but weren't gaining momentum in a way that I wanted, is that I stopped caring if I promoted too much. I think was just the core of it, is like there was a switch that went off in my brain and I was like, and I've had a few Twitter followers who are like, you post your podcast too much. And I go, okay, why are you following me? Like, if anyone knows anything about me, it's like I'm a podcaster. Like, this is the thing I do. This is what I'm working on right now. If you don't want to see them, I guess don't follow me on that platform. But like, I got to this point where it's like, I have to relentlessly promote these things in the right spaces to get the visibility, especially with Twitch streaming now. Like, Twitch is in the moment, right? People tune in and watch. I assume some people might watch the VOD, but like, it's about the interaction and the actual live part of it. And that struggle just shifted, and now I'm just trying to think of ways to like expand that. But I hear you with the social media struggle. I mean, I got off of Facebook for the most part last year as well. I still use my Instagram kind of as just an auto post to put all the stuff I make, but I really focused in on Twitter because it was just where I found I had a more interactive audience. But that said, when I was trying to balance all three platforms, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I had my own head up my ass. Like, you know, I think the three of us together when I was still producing with Magical Girl did a good job with the Magical Girl pages and stuff. But like, even then, I think we were all always kind of just figuring out what worked best because some stuff got responses and some stuff didn't. We couldn't always advertise because boobs, and the internet loves but hates boobs when you try to put money behind it. Like, you know, I think it's complicated and constantly evolving, and it's always a really big struggle when you're trying to promote.
I think, well, and also like in the case of Instagram, like it's become even harder because Instagram has basically admitted that they want you to treat their platform like it's a full-time job without you getting paid.
Yeah. Which
makes it harder to like reach people if you're not shadow banned entirely. And so like, I don't know, like my Tumblr, like I basically after Tumblr, Instagram seems to be the thing I'm best at simply because it's an image-based platform where It's like, if I do a good image and like it's within the TOS, then I can like get a decent amount of people to look at it.
Yeah.
Twitter, I'm kind of about because like when I want to post something through text, it's like I want to get my point across in its entirety. And the whole 140 character limit of Twitter is like, it kind of annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I think for visual stuff, obviously, I think that's why Twitter's better for me, is because putting a link to an audio clip and writing a succinct summary of a thing is way easier on Twitter. Whereas Instagram, like, most of my posts don't do anything until, like, the other day I bought one of David Rose's sweatshirts from Schitt's Creek, and I posted a photo of me being my best David on Instagram, and it went gangbusters because it's a pretty photo of me. And people liked it. And I get that. But, like, I don't think in that mentality. So it makes sense for it to work for you, especially as an artsy person and a burlesque person and a visual person. I think... Well,
and it's also interesting what gets likes and what doesn't. Right. Like, obviously boobs gets likes.
Yeah.
But then, like, because, like, let's be real, boobs gets likes.
Yeah.
But then, like, I'll do like really nice like professional photo shoots with friends and like post something from that, and that'll get maybe like 30 or 40 likes. But then I like shaved my head on election day, like had Maggie McMuffin shave my head, and then I just put a selfie of myself like up. And all the hair dudes came out of the fucking woodwork. I got like 100 likes on that shit in like 2 hours, and those are numbers that I never do because I have less than 1,000 followers.
Right.
And like still to this day, I think that selfie of me with a shaved head has like the most likes out of any of my things on Instagram.
Right.
Like a thing I took in 2 seconds. And like, or like the thing where like I just posted a picture of like me next to like my Sailor Saturn glaive. It's like, I'm not wearing makeup. I'm in leggings and a tank top. But like cosplay, Instagram loved that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's just very frustrating. And the whole thing is like I use it and like I like it like everybody else. But like I've kind of admitted to myself that like, if you like my brand, you like my brand. And if you don't, you don't. And like, go with the gods.
Sure. But I think that discovery is also really important, right? Like, I think, and I know we've had this conversation before, just me and you and Betty, we're not always comfortable with ourselves in our own skin. The three of us are very anxious people, though I think we balanced each other pretty well. When one of us was freaking out about something, the other two tended to play, wing guards pretty well. But like, it's understanding what your platform is. And I think, and I just as an observer of your Instagram, like your photos have been great and amazing. And it's so fun to watch you find yourself, especially since I know you as someone who's not always had confidence and is trying to figure out what you love about yourself and the work you do and all that stuff. And I've been in the same place, and like to see you kicking ass and making these awesome photos and putting stuff online is really awesome. I think that if nothing else, the pandemic has given us the time, because we needed a lot of time to work on ourselves, to self-discover, and to kind of do things we might not have done before, right? Because we have more time. And you said something earlier about having a lot of time is sometimes a bad thing because you get in your own head. And boy, is that a mood, because I am still my own worst enemy. But I think there's some good with that too, because it also, when we want to and we can work on it, which is a struggle, can make strides and understand ourselves in a way. And it's cool to see that kind of thing work. Do you think that once the pandemic kind of lightens out, you're going to be able to incorporate, I mean, I assume the photography stuff you can probably incorporate into taking photos at shows and stuff, right? Do you think that you can translate that knowledge, or is it mostly just like a static at home posed thing more?
Well, I think for me, well, it's also like what I'm interested in. Like,
right.
I'm not interested really in being a dude with camera at shows.
Right.
Like, that's not where my interests lie. I think the thing that's like, I'm not like, I don't think I'm going to be like one of those people that's like, I'm a photographer. Like I don't want to be one of those assholes. I think Things come out of my mouth. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Mostly when you say I don't want to be like those assholes and talking about photography, I just feel like somewhere Rob Starobin is sulking somewhere like, hey.
I think Rob knows exactly what kind of dude I'm talking about.
Of course. I just like to poke fun at him, but absolutely you're not talking about him by any means. I know that.
Yeah, but like I think the thing like that personally so like I've been one of those people that like has not necessarily been insecure about my weight, but has been insecure about myself, like my perception of self.
Right.
And like my self-image and like who I am as a person. And like one of the ways that like I love burlesque so much is that, and I think something that frustrates a lot of people about me is that I very much reject high femininity.
Right.
And like I reject the like constant like and I like rhinestoning things, but I reject the constant rhinestoning of things. I reject the, like, you must wear eyelashes at all time. I reject that you must wear high heels. Like, that's just not what my gender identity is.
Right.
I basically have always said, well, I'm a punk rock magical girl, because, like, that's what interests me, is, like, femininity as a way of self-expression and, like, trying to, like, sort of find a balance between my hard edges and like the softness. And so I think what photography does for me, and again, like I don't have a fancy setup. I literally have my phone in a ring light that I like bought off Amazon for like $50. And I like basically use a quarter of my room like with no fancy like backdrops or anything, literally the quarter of my wall. And like I pick a look for that week and then I take like 80 photos on my phone. Like for me, the photography stuff has been both a way to like make content and get like some of my income back, but also as a way of self-expression.
Sure.
Like a way to figure out who I am as a person and what interests me about the art of self-image.
Sure. I mean, and that makes total sense. I think for me, in a similar way, like I've always been doing podcasts for a long time, but it wasn't until this past year where like I started to really think about why I make them. Like part of it is for being able to talk to assholes like you, right? Like I love these kinds of conversations with my friends on this show. It's super fun. But also I think part of it is like, I guess I have something to say. And I guess like, you know, I made an active shift in the last couple of years to have as few straight white men on the show as possible. Because let's be honest, there are plenty of them. There are plenty of them everywhere. And a previous guest of the show, Nate, they also have been saying the same thing on their Twitter publicly. You know, when Nate and Cam came on the show, like straight white dudes got plenty of platforms. They don't need this one. And that's like some folks have been like none. And I'm like, no, I have a few friends who are straight white dudes who I like and are good people who I want to have on the show. But like I made this more active decision once I started engaging a podcast. Like I respect myself and my voice. So now I want my voice to be able to do something like share a friend of mine who is working on an awesome OnlyFans and taking incredible photos to promote her work and put a link in a bio so someone might click it and give you some money. Like that kind of stuff I think means more to me. Now, if there's a famous person who wants to come on my podcast, can I sell out a little? Sure. Because honestly, it's about promoting as well. But I think the reality is, you know, the self-image thing you mentioned is really important. And I think like if I can be mushy for a little for a brief moment, we've known each other a long time and I've seen myself and you and a lot of our friends grow in a way that just really makes my heart happy, right? Because we're starting to understand who we are. And I look at your photos of you and I can now see you the way I've always seen you, but now you see you that way and you're making photos that way. And like,
stop it!
No, I won't. And
don't make me cry, you bastard.
And I love that. It makes me so happy to see, because you've always been an attractive badass, and like to see those photos now on your Instagram. I'm like, yeah, Raina gets it. So that's been
I
really
mean,
fun.
to be fair, it's also like what I do is not like a straightforward point and click. It's like not to be like super cliche about it, but like AOL was like, you should download this app. It's called Visgo, and it's $20 a year. And I did. And then basically what I do is I take those photos and like the raw 80 photos I took, and then I choose which ones are the best. And then I essentially, what I do is paint over them.
Yeah.
Like I choose filters, and then I use like different colored like lights and angles through the app to essentially make like a painting of myself. That is like, it's still a photo, but like I basically make it in a way that so it's like a piece of art instead of just like hot girl shit. Not that it isn't hot girl shit, because it is hot girl shit. And like, yeah, most of those are me naked, but it's also like me naked is not what I'm interested in.
Right.
Like me as a work of art is what I'm interested in. And that I realize that sounds kind of selfish and kind of like super like up my own ass, but
it doesn't though. Like I hate this idea that confidence is selfishness. It's bullshit. And like I had to deprogram that, right? Like we talked earlier, I mentioned about like I had Twitter followers who are like, why you post your stuff so much? It's like, because I give a shit about me, and me giving a shit about myself shouldn't mean I'm selfish. It should mean I'm confident and I give a crap about the stuff I'm making. And like, I feel like there, especially on the internet, there's this line of like, oh, if you're too into yourself, then you're full of yourself. No, you're just confident. You do that hot girl shit on fucking Instagram.
Well, and it's also like, again, like just because I've been doing it doesn't mean I'm not depressed as fuck, because I'm still depressed as fuck. And like I still have confidence issues. Like, of course. January was like my 10th anniversary in burlesque, and it was kind of like, and it was also my 29th birthday, and so it was kind of like basically this past year, on top of the panini, has been like just sort of contemplating my existence and like what I've done.
Yeah.
Like basically since I was 19 years old, and like what I've devoted to this art form, and if I have more to give, and if people even care what like that I have more to give, because I like, as we've talked about before, my journey in burlesque has been very unorthodox and very much sort of like, I'm going to make my own lunch table in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And that is both like a good thing and a bad thing. Sure. Like it's a good thing because I basically get to say, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want. And like, if you don't like it, that's fine. But that also means that it's like not the most popular thing out there, or not necessarily like meant for like a general audience. Like again, we did a Homestuck show as our last show before the pandemic. Yep. And it was a hit because so many people were like, oh shit, I love that fandom. Like, and I want to relive my Tumblr years. But like, we've also had like things that have like been like a fail.
Yeah.
And like, it's sort of a balancing act of like finding what works and what doesn't. And like, thankfully we've had enough hits that like we can keep on going. But like, we've definitely had times where it's like, we had like 3 people, and you gotta play the shit out to those 3 people, but then you go drink and cry afterwards.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's true. And I think that, I don't know. I think that the reason I loved Magical Girl, and I'm still proud to be a part of it for as long as I was, and will be happy to interact in any way I can on the other side of the pandemic, whether it's, still DJing occasionally or even just being an audience member, is that Magical Girl felt honest in a way that I don't want to say nothing else did, but just it felt honest in a way that was familiar to me. And why I enjoyed being a part of it was because, like, I mean, a lot, all right, newsflash to anyone listening who's a fan of Magical Girl Burlesque, half the show ideas are just stupid shit that say to each other as a gag, and like half of them actually happened. So like, I think that there's some really wholesome honesty in that like, hey, here's a dumb idea. And then like a year later, that dumb idea as a show, whether it worked or not, is irrelevant. The fact that we made it happen or that you guys made it happen, like, I think that's really cool. And I think it's something worth being proud of.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that sometimes that works in our favor because, like, I think that when people think of Nerdlesque, they often think of, like, the hits, right? They think of, like, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like, the MCU, like, the big ones where it's, like, and not to diss on those fandoms, because, like, some of those fandoms I am a part of, but it's, like, that's what people think Nerdlesque is.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people that's like, that's not all that it is. And like, for better or worse, I'm the asshole who does like the niche act for this like one character nobody's ever heard of or nobody cares about. And I've accepted that is my lot in life.
I mean, that's fair, but also like the way you think about some of your acts specifically, like, look, you did a Fooly Cooly act, and like that's really cool to me because Fooly Cooly was a huge part of my sexual, I don't want to say awakening, but like growth. Like that was one of the first kind of weirdly sexual animes that I ever watched. The
whole thing is a metaphor for puberty. Let's be real.
Right. And so like but then for you to look at this and go, no, there's art here, and I'm going to make an act about it, and then doing it well, like not everyone can do that. And I think that we can all see ourselves in the MCU to some degree or another, right? I mean, I say that as a white dude, so it's a lot easier for me to see myself everywhere. But like, we don't always see ourselves in this. We may see ourselves in the smaller stuff, but we may not know if other people do. Like, look, I may never perform on a stage again, but the fact that the two of you boondoggled me into thinking I could do a lip sync for a Panic at the Disco show, and I have those photos and that video. Well, I'll probably never watch the video in its entirety because I can't. The photos are some of my favorite photos of myself because I believed it. I believed I could do it, you know? And I think the brand of burlesque and art that you are creating is that kind of thing. It's like you are an enabler of stupid shit in the best way. And I think that's really awesome.
I mean, well, because that's like, again, and like, please don't cancel me, NYC Burlesque, but like, like, I appreciate classical burlesque. I appreciate that that's where the art form started. And like, I appreciate that some people just want to be like their high femme selves and like want to go out there and look pretty as fuck. And that takes a lot of fucking work.
Yeah.
Like the amount of like money and like emotional labor you have to put in your costuming and makeup and just looking like that every day. And like, that's just like, for me, that's personally exhausting because like, yeah, like where my interest lies is like, what do you have to show me? Like, what is like a fandom you loved as a child, or what is like a story that you really want to tell, or something that you just think is like hilariously fucking funny. Like, I remember when we did the Jewish show.
Yes.
And like Angelique a la mode literally had her husband come on stage with her and blow the shofar while she strips to it. And it's good. Like, that's not even a story, but that's fucking hilarious. Like, I literally was laugh crying the entire time.
Same.
Because it's like, it's just so absurd that like, if you don't love that, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah. I mean, that show is so hyper specific too, because we're both Jewish humans who engage with our Judaism on different levels, right? Like, we're recording this during Passover, which I'm observing. And like, but we like, I think our Jewishness has always been a core part of our identity. Whether we believe God is real or not is not important. We believe in our communities, and we are Jewish, period, regardless of how we feel religiously. And like, to make that show happen was so great because there's another show that happens almost yearly also that's very similarly Jewish but in a different way, and there was just something that I felt so core to our identity and something that we didn't show a lot, and I think that's just as important too. Is like that Jewish show, I got to dress as a Jewish old man and host the show, and it was the dumbest thing, but it was great. And I think that that's really awesome accomplishment too, is when you can kind of throw a curveball like that and have someone stripped to a shofar blowing.
Well, and I mean, like, the whole point of that show, like, I very much like, because, like, obviously, like, the shows that people know, like, the Jewish burlesque shows people know are about the holidays, are about, like, Hanukkah and stuff like that. And I very much put my foot down, and I was like, I don't want to steal those people's shit, and two, I want, like, people to understand there is more to us than just Noras and dreidels.
Yeah, I mean, and that's legit.
Like, I wanted to, like, basically my requirements were, you have to be Jewish, and this, like, the recording artist you choose has to be Jewish as well. The act that I did was to a Say Anything song, which is a Jewish emo band, and the whole act revolves around my ambivalence towards dating, and, like, basically my feelings that, like, as a femme, you're kind of forced into this position of feeling that you're not enough unless you have a partner.
Yeah.
And I mean, technically, like, in the major sense, that isn't about Jewish identity, but it's about, like, sort of like me taking on that subject with a, like, dry Jewish wit.
Yeah. As I recall, that act got a standing ovation when it finished too. So, like, people definitely identified on some level with it. Yeah. I mean, I think seeing yourself in your art is really important. And I think that what you were doing before the pandemic showed that. And I hope that you continue to be able to do that post pandemic. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, because I miss you, because, you know, I used to see your face like every other week, and now I haven't seen you in like a year. But also I've been wanting to have you back on for a while. And so I'm glad that you reached out and that we were able to do this. Before I let you go and you do the show's sign off, which I will remind you of, can you tell folks where they can find you on the internet and find all the stuff that you do?
Yeah, right now I basically live on my social media. So if you want to check out my Safe for Work photo work, you can go to my Instagram, which is Raina Sinclair 28. If you want to check out my not Safe for Work stuff, that is on my OnlyFans, also under Raina Sinclair. And I am technically on the Twitter, but really what I do is just, like, reblog other people's stuff and occasionally promote my OnlyFans, but that is also at Raina Sinclair. Oh, well, so technically we are on hiatus, and I don't know when we will return because my co-host is basically going through a shit ton of life changes. But I also have a podcast, technically, that comes and goes when it can, called Defend Your Ship, which is all about fandom shipping and what fandom teaches us about relationships. And that is on the Spotify's, or really anywhere you can get podcasts. And we also technically have a Twitter, but we don't really use it.
Yes, definitely go listen to Defend Your Ship. I was a guest in their first season, I believe, bringing my love of Mass Effect to you and Stevie, who nodded and smiled and supported me in my fandomness, which I greatly appreciated. Which is really all we want.
Take all takers. We take all takers. If you want to talk to us for an hour about your feelings, like, go ahead. Go ahead.
Definitely go check all that stuff out. Raina, thank you again for being here. It means the world to me. Before you go, as you know, we have a saying on the show.
Also, wait. You should also fucking check out Magical Girl Burlesque.
Oh, duh. Yeah. Why don't you plug the actual thing you do? Your burlesque troupe. That's probably a good idea.
It got lost in the list. We also have, so right now we are not doing a lot because pandemic, but we have a Instagram, Magical Girl Burlesque, We also have a Facebook page, Magical Girl Burlesque. We also have a Twitter, Magical Girl Burlesque. So yeah, just follow us on all of those platforms to see what we're up to. If you missed the Comic Consolation Prize show, I think it's still on Vimeo. So Venmo Betty Brash $12 with the code word MGBCon, and she'll send you the link.
There you go.
If you want some Comic-Con burlesque content.
Do it. It's worth it. It was amazing. It was great. It captured the heart of the New York Comic-Con experience, as far as I'm concerned.
All right, I've done everything. That was everything.
That was everything. I'm sure I can find the thread of making that a clean edit, and if not, we'll just all laugh together as we stumble through the outro of this show. Raina, thank you so much for joining me. Before we go, I will have you do our sign-off, which, of course, is music is life and life is good. It's this idea that as long as we're making shit, life isn't that bad, which is sometimes true, but especially in the pandemic is super important. So please, if you would, sign us off with that.
Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.nat.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.